Very fun. Ooh, lots of fun contraptions. More and more.
It's just
Oh, sorry. I have my phone. I'll add it to it.
You can record us.
Cool.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start off. So, your character, Laurel. How much of that came from you, or versus the makeup that you were wearing, getting you into that character?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I will say that definitely the external helped a lot in manifesting exactly how she carried herself. Obviously, I did a lot of mask and movement work in college, and that was definitely something I leaned on in this very outside-in sort of experience. But at the same time, what was so beautiful when it came to the scenes as they were writing them, particularly in episode 4 onward, there was room to find a kind of softness and vulnerability, despite the fact that she's this intimidating-looking Klingon. But I found it to be a mixture of everything. As the actor approaching it, and then story-wise, that just kind of developed, I think, as we all got to know each other on the writer's side and the actor's side. So it really is just such a great mixture. Yeah.
Mary, you've been very active in the fan community with the fans. What were your expectations when you came into Star Trek, and how do you see it today?
Well, it's been such an incredible journey with that, and particularly starting that journey before anything had come out, when just the announcement that I was a part of the show, to now that the full season is out, and there was such a great journey for my character, and kind of now the reverberations starting to do things like this, kind of discussing what happened in season 1. My big goal always, as somebody who grew up loving certain franchises and just being passionate about things, I wanted to give that level of respect to the fans, because I take it seriously, and I think it's important that we bring all of ourselves to everything we do, but particularly with something that's so beloved for so long. And that's what's, the interactions, it's been so fun. I hadn't done Twitter before I did the show, but it's been so fun. I've met people, both, fans from all over the world, different artists who are creating fan art, artists that I respect in different mediums that I find out are watching the show, and I get to meet. Like, it's just been amazing across the board, and I think Star Trek is something that is beloved by a lot of different lots of different types of people, and so it's fun to learn who actually has been a Trekkie their whole life, and is embracing discovery. It's been very humbling and very beautiful.
Is it tougher to learn lines in Klingon, or to say it with the teeth in?
I like the teeth. I mean, they tease me on set too, is like teeth, eyes, like I don't feel complete until it's all in. So I definitely feel that next level of saying the words is, I don't feel complete until it's all there. But I definitely appreciate not having to practice my lines in the full makeup and teeth. It's great. I mentioned on the panel that I do have these 2-hour sessions with Rhea Nolan, our dialect coach. And that's really about breaking it down and getting kind of the basis of the sounds, reminding me to really go in the back of my throat for certain noises. And so then, but it is that final moment when it's all coming together, that there is a certain release. So in a certain way, that feels easier. It flows more. I wouldn't say I'm like, that was a piece of cake, but it definitely feels like all that hard work beforehand pays off.
Do you have a favorite aspect of your character?
I mean, yes, many. I treat all my characters, well, with a lot of respect, but I also feel like they come to me at a time in my life when I need them. And I felt that very much with Laurel, just kind of her arc of living in the shadows and working from the sidelines and not having confidence in her own abilities and power. That was a big journey for me it's a continued journey for me. I'm still trying to own myself and my own power in my own life. And coming out of school, there's just like a lot of uncertainty after you graduate, and to have this role where I got to kind of manifest all of those insecurities and fears, and then to finally culminate it with like being given this detonator and kind of being like, well, I gotta do it, and all those fears and nerves that I felt doing that speech as the actor, I got to manifest in the character. So the short answer to your question, I would say, would be her sensitivity and her vulnerability, because I think that's true for all characters, but I think that I've been given room to really breathe into that from a lot of the scenes and moments I've had from the writers.
So things ended happening rather quickly at the end of season 1 for Round.
Yeah.
So how tenuous do you think her hold is?
Right. I mean, it's a good question, right? I'm very interested to see how they explore that in season 2. I think that it could go a lot of different ways, and what's fun being in this part of the timeline is there's a lot of room for finding out why things ended up the way they are in 10 years. I think it's really fun. I love that they have the moment where I have or I say, I'm the leader, and they laugh at me. So obviously not everyone's just like, okay, cool, you got great. It's all good. So, and the fact that my last line is the reunification of our race begins now. I think that Laurel is a very hard worker and very determined and fierce, and always, she starts with plan A, B, and C, but usually reverts to X, Y, and Z, but she will have a plan. I'm very interested to see how it unfolds. I'm as in the dark as you are.
So now that you're a little more proficient in this new language, like many people who learn a new language, sometimes you find yourself, when someone asks you something, answering back either in your head or actually verbally in that foreign language, not your mother tongue. Do you ever find yourself answering back either in your head or actually verbally in Klingon?
I hope to reach that point. I think I'm still very much on the learning curve. I can definitely recognize the sounds of Klingon. Like, I can tell if someone's trying to speak Klingon to me. So that's a step in the right direction. It's not, and as I've said, like, reading it on the page, it doesn't just look like a bunch of gobbledygook letters. I do have a sense of the language and its structure, but I've yet to reach the point where I can really do that.
Like, do Klingons come up to you at conventions and start speaking to you in Klingon?
I haven't had a direct. I am sure that time is to come.
I mean, that'll be
well,
great.
Robin Stewart, our translator, did say that to me, because I did want to have some lines to obviously respectfully say, like, I'm not as fluent as I wish I was, all this sort of stuff, and she encouraged me to go in that vein. She's like, of course, like, people are gonna think that because when you have the lines written for you, you make sure it sounds like you're fluent. But that's part of it too. Is like with a franchise like this, it's that weird line of, we know there's fiction, but it's also, I just never want to tread in a direction that's disrespectful.
She hasn't taught you any curse words?
Oh yeah. Hoopah. That's my favorite, because it's like all the hardest sounds in Klingon, like in one. Yeah.
And it means?
I'll let you figure it out.
Mary, the scenes you had with Bach,
Yeah.
Tyler, the very heavy sexual aspect,
Yeah.
how did you get prepared for that, and what was your take for a Star Trek world?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that, because that was a big journey for me too, was embracing that the Klingons are innately sensual creatures in a way that the humans aren't. But to me, that was part of what made them beautifully alien. And part of what I was able to justify, certainly like in the scene in Despite Yourself, episode 10, that Jonathan Frakes directed so amazingly, and particularly that scene was so complex, and I know Shazad and I were like, we don't want this to just be some creepy Hannibal Lecter sort of situation. And it was like, for me, I was like, right, she's using her sensuality because she is not the Puritan American that I am, that has been like taught to have a certain shame around that. She is using that because that's love also, because for her that connection with Vogue is not just carnal, it's pure and it's genuine. So just the way she navigates it is more alien than human. And I think that it's a very interesting line, and I think that's a beautiful gift of sci-fi, is that you can explore these themes in a slightly different way than you would if it were just two humans interacting. But interesting to see, too, that her empowerment by that is misconstrued by the humans. I thought that was an interesting kind of message there. But for me, it was very important, and certainly with the scene that we all know that I'm just talking about what that was and making it clear, talking with Aaron and Gretchen and Eric and Bowie and all that it was Tyler. It was not Tyler that was in that relationship. It was always Vogue. It was just his memories got really screwed up. But that's also my bad. The surgeries. But at the same time, like from Laurel's perspective, it was never like she did not cross that line. And I think that's very important that we're sensitive to that. That it's complex and it's crazy, and again, it's a mythology. I mean, you look at Medea, you look at Antigone, you look at any Shakespeare's plays. They go to these crazy heights, but it's because we're exploring something deeper in humanity. So, yeah. So that question is very, very important to me, and something I took very seriously. And I think, it's confronting. I mean, like we say, this show does go to a certain edge that other ones haven't, and I think that's part of it, is we need to maybe reevaluate how we think about those things.
Are there any scenes from Shakespeare? Because obviously you draw on that. You spent some time doing Shakespeare. Is there any scenes, or I'll also just say scenes, from Shakespeare that you draw on very specifically? With these?
That's a good question. Well, I will say that the two roles I played before I played Laurel were Macbeth and Iago, strangely enough. And I actually feel that there are elements, but particularly of Iago, that the way in which he is so malleable. And every scene he's in, depending on who he's with, he's a different person. And I think Laurel embodies that, but in a female way, and her relationship with Cornwell is very different from her relationship with Tyler, obviously, and then Saru. That she's a real listener, like she said, she's from the shadows, and she recalibrates based on who she's interacting with, and ultimately to her own gain, hopefully. But I found this with Iago, which is maybe controversial, but I found a real, actually, like, vulnerable through line for him as well, that I think a lot of people don't want to see. I have stuff coming up, projects exploring that in more detail. Hopefully I'll be able to let you know about that soon. But I think that it was a real gift to having just come off of working on that part and learn so much about how I defined honesty and truth. And to transfer that into Laurel was very, very fun. But Laurel feels more authentic to me, funnily enough, than Iago in a certain way. Because something about being a woman, but a Klingon woman, I don't know. I guess I walk around feeling like a Klingon woman.
I've got a bit of a fan service question for you. All right, so were you a fan of Star Trek before getting onto this? All right, so Laurel, or you as yourself, if you were in charge of your own away mission and could choose any 5 characters from any of the Star Trek series to go with you on this mission, who would your team be?
Oh, that's okay. Right, there's a away mission, me or Laurel. Because I think
whichever one's easier for you.
Well, I think actually coming from Laurel's perspective, just because I am kind of aware of how she is in the world. I mean, I do think, and if we could span timelines and all that sort of stuff, I think she would kind of try and maybe ban the other female Klingons. Like, I think maybe she would talk to the Duras sisters and and Grilka. I mean, Grilka's like Mary's personal favorite. I think so that's 3 right there.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about like Kayla and Balana. I don't think. I think half Klingon. We'd be okay about it. But trying to think. I feel like if it were Laurel, I think she would be trying to. She's in. You ask me these questions. I tell you, I'm very passionate. You're going to get a very long-winded. But I will say that I do think that she's at a turning point. I think the Laurel you met at the beginning of the season would have picked a bunch of Klingons. And I think perhaps by the end, she's starting to realize that maybe she should look outward more. And that there is more to the humans. And if there's more to the humans, perhaps there's more to the Romulans or the Andorians or, I think she's at a turning point. So, but maybe, and I actually do think Laurel would Cornwell, now that I think about it. Like, that's one of my favorite relationships she has in the show. Of course, the Tyler relationship, but like, yeah, I just think that there's a real respect.
Yeah.
That, and Jane talked about this, that on After Strike, that the first scene that we have together after the scream, there's like a whole first chunk that where we were kind of scoping each other out, and she really proves to me that she's smart and she gets that I'm not like all the other Klingons, and I kind of respect that. And kind of, that's already innately there with what was cut, but I think that sort of complexity of like, oh, I'm smart and you're smart, so the smart thing to do is not just kill each other. And I think that she would trust that she would have her back in a certain way. But then, of course, I'm the one that almost kills her. But that's on Laurel. Yeah. She knows Cornwell's trustworthy. So that's my long-winded answer.
All right.
Well, following on that, because you're saying that Laurel sees her character or herself growing, right?
Yeah.
So, last scene, we see Tyler decide to go with Laurel. Can you see your character, Laurel, getting back together in some way with Tyler, or how do you see that relationship?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what they come up with. But from my perspective, certainly where I was in 15 was that I really didn't think that there was any remnant of Vogue left until he speaks to me in Klingon. At the end of 12, when I do the surgery, that death wail, that's like, goodbye, Vogue. He's no longer there. I choose to make that sacrifice so that Vogue doesn't suffer. And so it's such a surprise to suddenly have him still have these memories, even if they're neutered memories. I think it's complicated. I was saying to someone earlier too that it isn't a typical love triangle, that Vogue and Laurel had a legitimate relationship, and Burnham and Tyler had a legitimate relationship. And I think Laurel is smart enough to get that. I certainly think that they don't walk off into the sunset in that moment. They're not like, oh, and everything's fine. I think that they understand the complexity of it.
He's going to have a heck of a time being accepted by the other Klingons.
Yeah, so the possibilities are endless, but I think it's, in that way, I think my friend would say to me in college, you gotta have the breakdown before the breakthrough. And I think that Laurel had that kind of breakdown and is piecing herself back together and trying to do the right thing. And ultimately, the most important thing in 15 for Laurel was to bring peace, or to understand that this collaboration was more important than any personal grievances. So, leaders. Making personal sacrifices.
Mary, what's your biggest surprise about Star Trek?
Biggest surprise? Just in kind of
fandom
Yeah.
role, you've been living it for over a year,
Yeah.
almost 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a shocking surprise, but I will say that it has been overwhelming how much love has really been given from the community. That I've seen far more love than hate. I've seen people, like your girl in the panel today, who was like, I wanted to hate this, but I liked it. Like that sort of mentality of like, she still watched it. Like she still eventually, like she was resistant, but eventually she did watch it, and she could have liked it or not. But I think that there's an open-mindedness and a hope for the future that propels fans forward, and I'm really thrilled that that's true.
Man.
Yeah.
We're getting kicked out of the room.
Get out of here.
Thank you so